Now, let me ask you this. When we move forward a little bit, we're still in the 80s. Again, one of the greatest just decades in our time here. Nick, it's 1985, and the Goonies, Never Say Die. You're working with Richard Donner, Steven Spielberg, and a cast of many kids that are still doing very well for themselves today. Now, in 2017, the Goonies was entered into the National Film Registry for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. How does it feel to have been a part of something that is so ingrained into the fabric of history, adored by fans across multiple generations, and a cult freaking classic?
I didn't know until you just said that. That's pretty amazing. And the Goonies, from all of the films that I've done, and I've done some pretty big ones, I've gotten more press out of the Goonies than any of them. It's amazing. Everybody loves the Goonies. And when I was in Ireland, they showed it. They had a new 4K print that we showed in Galway, and the place was packed. And it's like a line around the block. So in Ireland, Goonies is still huge.
Wow.
Yeah, I actually saw that that 4K release was in theaters for a week, and it actually outperformed other
Current
new
movies.
releases that had a head start on it in their cinema run. It's just, yeah, it goes to show that
True art is truly timeless. Whether it's painting, whether it's film, music, it's art.
Goonies never say die.
You know it.
There you go.
Was it your previous work with Spielberg on Close Encounters that led to your involvement on that project?
Actually, it was, but I worked with Spielberg on his first ever movie, Sugarland Express, when he was like 25 years old. And then he asked us actually to do Jaws, and we didn't want to do that. So on Close Encounters, we went and did that. And then it actually was, he introduced me to Donner. And then Donner took over from there.
From Mike Riva doing the sets, and then Nick McLean on camera, and this wonderful, crazy group of kids, and Spielberg looking over my shoulder all of the time, which I happen to love because I guess he's the biggest kid of them all and comes up with the best ideas.
Spielberg was bugging Donner and I every day when we were up in the story about this, that, and the other thing. And Donner says, I know how to get him out of this deal. When we get back to Hollywood, we'll offer him to do the second unit. And we did, and Steven took over the second unit on another stage, and we never heard a complaint again the rest of the movie.
Oh my God.
He did some great stuff on the movie, though.
Let me ask you this real quick, because I know this is not in the questions, but something you said caught my interest here. You said that you weren't interested in doing Jaws. Now, did you not like the script? And let me ask you this: looking back on it, is this something you wish you would have done or entertained?
Yeah, I would have loved to know, but the cinematographer I was working for at that time was Vilmos Zsigmond, and he had done Deliverance, which was a water movie, and water movies are really tough.
Right.
So he said, no, let's go do something else. I forgot what we did. But then when Spielberg came back and we got Close Encounters, that's, we teamed back up with him.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so I run a photography business, and whenever there's kids involved, I always schedule more time than I normally would because kids are just unpredictable. They're hard to work with. One of the things that impresses me most about the Goonies is the dynamic between this group of kids and how well they are at doing, like, they do an adult good job at acting.
Yeah.
I was wondering what that was like from your perspective, being on set, getting all these shots, if it was more or less challenging for you.
Very challenging. And normally what we would do when they misbehave, we just yell at them, scream at them, scare them. So they would get back to where they belong. And normally I would have two painters on a set, but working in those caves, I had two plasterers. So I would be hiding lights in the caves and then have to plaster over them. And naturally, as soon as you set a light, the kids would walk, one of them would walk in front of it, and there was no light down there. It was really low key. So it was pretty tough down in those tunnels.
Yeah, I could imagine. About the kids too, I read that they were all really standoffish toward Richard Donner during like the last week of production, which turned out to be at the instruction of Steven Spielberg, who said that he was going to fly them all out to his house, or Richard Donner's house in Hawaii, the beach house, after production was wrapped. And he took it as them like being just cold to him and standoffish. Did you witness any of that in the last week of production?
Yes, I did. and Dick told me the story of what happened. He got up one morning with a little hangover and went out on his deck. And all of a sudden, out of the water comes the Goonies. And he went, "Oh, no." He went nuts. He couldn't. And yeah, Spielberg, flew them all over and families in his jet and pulled that off on Dick, which is, I wish I had been there to see it. It would have been great.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's such a great story.
Oh, wow. Now, speaking of Spielberg, now we also read that he directed at least one scene in the film. Do you happen to know, or are you at liberty to say which scene that may have been?
Yeah, I can tell you exactly. He was on the next stage from the great big ship that we had. So he had that slide built. Remember when the kids slid down that slide?
Mm-hmm.
That's all Steven. He had that, and he had the wishing well and the waterfall where they came through the waterfall. And when the kids had to take a leak and the kids were kissing or something, they went in the wrong tunnel or whatever. But he did a lot, and everything, of course, Steven does is as good as we could do. So we were glad to have him do it.
Yeah. I heard he was a very hands-on producer, to say the least.
Oh, 100%. And then, like I said, he would call us up every night when we were in Astoria and have some thing to say about our work, about what we didn't do or this, that. And it was, it's just that he was bored. So Dick gave him that job, and we got back and we never heard from him again.
Wow.
That's so funny. So I saw also that your brother worked on this film. Can you tell us about what that experience was like, working with your brother?
Oh, it's great. I could very rarely get him, though. He's pretty popular. My son, too. My son now has been on Grey's Anatomy for about 7 or 8 years, and they're both top-notch what they do in the industry. So if I had my brother, I probably only had him for a week, but whenever I can get family members, I get them.
Very nice.
Now, you mentioned earlier before about water shoots being difficult, and also you mentioned the lighting in the cave and working with some of the kids was a little bit difficult because it was so dark down there. Let me ask you this. Would you say that was the most challenging part of the production, or what would you say that it was?
No, I think you're right. That it was the most challenging. I think the most memorable is when we went on the big stage with the big ship. I mean, that was there. That was on stage 12 at Warner Brothers, which is the biggest stage, one of the biggest stages in Hollywood. And in fact, where my arc lights were, 90 feet high. So it's huge stage. And it was really, and that was all that water. And we did a whole scene in that water with an octopus that never made the movie. So it was, as the kids are crossing to go to the ship, this octopus attacks them. And we all had these wetsuits. And of course, Donner's a big prankster, and he brought some scissors and he would cut holes in your wetsuits. So the wetsuits were, good for about a day.
Are you feeling that, man? Yeah, I'm feeling it.
Hey, Dick. No, that's really interesting.
Mythbusters.
What was the moment with? Because I had read that Josh Brolin, because Richard Donner wanted real reactions when the boat was shown for the first time.
I brought them all in, not blindfolded, but with their backs to the camera. They all knew what they were going to see, but they had no idea what it was going to look like.
And I read that Josh Brolin fouled up one of the takes because he saw it and just went, "Holy shit!" And they were like, "Oh, we can't use that."
Actually, all the kids, they wouldn't let them on the stage before that scene. And we waited for that scene for weeks and weeks until it was just right. And when they came out of those shoots, the first time they got up and turned around and looked at the ship, that was the real reaction. Donner wanted that reaction. And from where they landed in the water to where the ship was, just like this, it was a real reaction.
You could tell that, like when you say we waited weeks for the right time to shoot that, I think that's why a movie like The Goonies and movies from that era, when they come back on a re-release in Ireland, they outdo movies that are popular, that are just now recently released, because there's just so much more time and consideration that's put into every little detail of these pictures. It really creates like the peak of movie magic in cinema.
I agree.
there's something
It's a
so
nostalgia to it. It's definitely a nostalgia to it. Instead of just cranking them out, man, we're only there for 2. You know, you take your time and do those things.
Is there a particular shot or sequence that you're the most proud of when you look back at the Goonies?
Let's see, I would say the tunnels, the first time they go into the tunnels, I underexposed it. And we had to first, that was the only scene I ever had to reshoot in my whole career. It was so black. Donner says, I think we should go back and do this again. And so down in the tunnels, it was such a challenge. It was a nightmare to get all that stuff. But I would say that was the most challenging. And that's the most proud I was of anything in that film.
Yeah, I mean, for most of the movie taking place underground in low lighting, it looks magnificent. And I mean, low lighting's got to be one of the most challenging things to work with,
especially back then.
Oh yeah, I keyed a lot of that stuff at 5-foot candles, which is not much light. It's almost key at a f2, but with real fast film with 800 ASA film. But another scene is when they got to that Bones piano to get the right key to make that thing come down so they could get into the slide. That was really tough too, because we did a green screen below them there. So it looked like they were, falling, from 100 feet up in the air if the rocks were falling or something. But that was pretty challenging too. It came out real good.
I think one of my favorite shots in the movie, and it's such a simple shot, but it's so pretty, is when Sean Astin and Josh Brolin are on the porch when the dudes come with the foreclosure papers and they leave and it's raining outside and it pans around the house and you see like the sweeping hills of Astoria and it's raining and they hug on the side of the porch. It's such a pretty shot.
Yeah, and I overdid it a little bit. I had 2 guys gather up a bunch of leaves and go up on the roof, and they were throwing these leaves off, but they overdid it a little bit. If you'll notice next time you see it, they threw a few handful of leaves too many. But I always liked them to have just come down, but a couple of things were just clumps of leaves. So get a kick out of that next time you see that. Yeah, it's a good shot.
It looked great, and those little details like having leaves being thrown, even if there was a little too many, it's those little things like that. Yeah, it really gives it depth.
Awesome.
Do you have a favorite memory from the production?
I would say, I guess, doing my scene, that I'm still getting a residual from it.
There you go.
Overall, it was just a fun movie to work on, and it was the top people in the industry, and these kids were so young, and they all went on to do very good. In fact, the kid that played Chunk, I don't know whether you know about that, but he's a huge showbiz lawyer now. He's got his own. In fact, Donner fixed him up with a bunch of lawyers, and now I think he's got his own agency.
And if I might say, the most attractive of all the cast members, as far as like how what time has done to them.
Yeah,
like,
he's made it, man.
He's GQ now.
Yeah, that truffle shuffle really worked out after all these years.
Yeah, he's skinny as a rail now and bald as a billiard.
Now, before we move on, last question about the Goonies. Is there anything else you'd like to share that you think the fans of the film would like to know that they can't get on IMDb, or that maybe there are some rumors behind it, or just a nice story they may want to know?
I can't think of really one offhand. It was just a great time and a story, a lot of good old friends working together. And that was the first 2 weeks of the movie or month of the movie. And it was all of us just kind of gelling, getting together and going on to do the rest of the movie. So I would just say it was just a great experience is all I can say.
There's a one shot in the Goonies that I was really impressed by, and I'm curious how it was pulled off, because I feel like it was way too smooth to be a helicopter, and I can't think of any other way it was done. I think it was too tall for a crane. When all the kids are riding their bikes down the path into the woods.
Absolutely a helicopter, and that was my pilot was Ricky Hawley, who was like the best in the industry, and I did a lot of helicopter work in a lot of movies and a lot of commercials and stuff like that. But that was definitely Ricky. And we did it 2 or 3 different times. But then Ricky went on to die on a runaway train. He hit a wire and went in. In fact, I still go out and pour beer on his grave every once in a while. He was just an excellent he was a Vietnam helicopter pilot, and he could fly backwards damn near as well as he could fly forward. So that's why that shot was so smooth.
Hats off to him. Yeah, because that was deceptively smooth. I was racking my brain trying to figure out, like, all right, what's happening here? Because this is.
Yeah, I remember the day we did that, and we actually flew. I asked him down where the start of the movie is like, we did that with a helicopter too. It's like the RVs go for like a race on the beach, and we flew between those two rocks, those big haystack rocks, and I don't think there was 10 feet of space, rotor space on either side, but he could do it. The guy was magic.
That is precise, man. That is very precise.
Beautiful shot. Man, I'm glad you brought up that.
Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Why don't you subscribe? It'll last longer.